The Buckets, brought to you by BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, joined as I am every Sunday night for your Monday episode by the amazing, the incredible Jays. I got Jim Turvey, Joe Delara joining me, and we'll break down today. We're going to give you best bets for the Monday slate. Only 4 games as the NBA crams a couple back-to-backs in before the big tournament night Tuesday slate, which we'll have a best bets episode for you. And then, as we always do, we're going to take a futures look on Monday. And this week, our topic du jour, I asked the fellas what they were thinking of, and they wanted to talk about DPOY. And looking at the market, we got some interesting stuff. So you're going to want to see what we come up with. And if you want to track the bets that we come out of from this episode and from the analysis with, you can do it in the award-winning Action Network app. Best way for you to track your picks. You get up to the second information where the bets and money are coming in on. A helpful feature is the line move alerts. So especially for football, obviously, it's really huge when you got key numbers. But the other thing that you can do is you can track stuff like, hey, all right, I bet this under last night, and now the total has gone up and up and up and up and up. You might, like, that gives you an idea of like, all right, look, the steam is heading the other direction. You can either double down and get a better number, or you can buy out of the position because it's rare that you're going to get middled on the total. Not impossible, but those kind of things are helpful, and you can find that in the award-winning Action Network app. You can also catch this podcast in there. Another place you can catch it is on our YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/The Action Network. Hit like and subscribe. We're working on some live show stuff for the NBA. You've got Action Island. You've got the Power Hours. You've got so much cool content. Check it out at youtube.com/The Action Network. All right, guys, let's get started. We'll go ahead and we'll go around the table. Jim, we're going to start with you. Give me your best bet for the Monday slate.
Yeah, I like the Cavs money line. And once it drops, I'm be looking at Keegan Murray points. I want to see how much the books adjust. There's no number right now, though.
So De'Aaron Fox not expected to play in this one. Early indications are that he's not going to play, and therefore this line has moved a little bit. It was 1.5. It is now 2.5. Money line on the Cavs still plus 100. So you are not having to pay the juice right now in the market on that. Joe Delara, what's your best bet for the Tuesday slate?
I like the Cavs along with Jim, but I'm going to Kristaps Porzingis over 2.5 threes or 18.5 points, whichever you prefer.
Okay. I am actually going to sit this one out. I was going to do Cavs money line, but if you like it, Jim, and you like it, Joe, and I take it, that bet is dead as fuck in the water. So I am going to go ahead and take the hit here and not go ahead and post this and allow us to get that win on that one. There's no way a triple like survives on the Buckets podcast. So nothing for me on this slate. I looked at the board. I will say this: I like the Knicks or the Celtics a little bit versus the Knicks. The Knicks, unfortunately, under Tibbs, like the whole thing on Tibbs teams is like they try so hard and they work so hard. Under Tibbs, the Knicks are 64% ATS on second nights of a back-to-back on Segababas. So I can't go there. Like I want to. I show value on the number. I also will say that like my projections right now think that the Knicks suck ass, and I don't think the Knicks suck ass. I think their offense is stabilizing a little bit. Now, before the show, Joe mentioned that one reason they've been a lot better is like, RJ Barrett's playing really well, and that makes me think, well, maybe they're not stabilizing. Maybe this is just a blip. I don't think that that's going to hold. But in general, the Knicks defense is really good. This could be like a real grinded out game. We've seen the Celtics kind of like first game, right? Like Celtics kind of struggle with some of the offensive stuff that the Knicks are able to do defensively. So I'm going to stay away from it. Let's go to Jim. Cavs here, a small dog on the road coming off of a big win versus the Warriors. Little bit of a letdown spot, right? Kings are trying to survive, starting to stabilize a little bit without De'Aaron Fox, but they're still struggling versus pretty rough teams at home. Why do you like the Cavs, particularly in this game?
Yeah, I think it's partially liking the Cavs, but also looking to fade the Kings. I tried to fade the Kings over the weekend, and they were able to beat the Thunder. The Thunder were unable to beat them. I was on the Thunder in that game, but the Kings have looked pretty rough without De'Aaron Fox. He's listed as doubtful right now. This is going to change a little bit if the news comes that he somehow is playing. But given the fact that this line has already moved towards the Cavs, that tells me that the market does not think he's playing. And without him, they really have not looked good. They were able to grind out that win over the weekend against the Thunder, as mentioned, but that was a game in which the Thunder starters made a combined 2 threes amongst all 5 of them. It was not a good shooting night for Thunder. Flip side of that, the Cavs, now that they have everyone back, They have, you mentioned that win over the Warriors. They had 2 wins over the Warriors in their last 3 games. They did drop the game in between, ironically, to the Thunder. The Thunder shot about twice as well from 3 in that game that they beat the Cavs than they did in the loss to the Kings. So in the NBA, it's always a little bit of a make or miss league. So, we got to hope that we get out on the good side of that more often. But for me, this comes down to looking to fade the Kings a little bit and thinking the market's maybe a touch behind on a Cavs team that now is fully healthy. And I think, by preseason numbers, we all had as one of the strongest teams in the East, and this number isn't quite getting there. So I think you said that the number already moved on the spread to about 2.5. That's like a round to where I'd like it to -3. I still like that money line at +100. I'd probably take it to around, -105, maybe -110.
Yeah, there's a -2 in the market as well. Total in this game is 224. I show a lot of value on the under, surprisingly, in part because the Cavaliers defense is so good. I get, it's early in the season, so I want to like the Cavs on this road trip because it's early season. Sometimes it's a good thing for you. Like you go off, you get this win versus the Warriors. You're rolling. You're kind of like they've got their guys back, so they're kind of settling in. I show a lot of value on this. Like I show this as like I have got this Cavs -4 right now with Fox out. Like that's where I think the line should be. I think the Cavs should be 4-point favorites here. I don't think the Kings are like, even with home court, I don't think that the Kings are that much better than the Cavs. I just don't think that's appropriate. But like I said, I will take the hit there. Joe, you also like this game. Why do you like it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is that the Kings offense just is really not the same without De'Aaron Fox. They score about 12 points less actually 16 points less per game over the past 2 seasons, from 122 down to 106, 107 or so. I think that's just too significant of an edge. And like Jim said, I think the numbers are like a little sticky still right now, where the Cavs, kind of struggled a little bit out the gate, but then now like they're intact, and that defense is legit when you have both Mobley and Allen. So I really think that the Kings are going to struggle to score, and the Kings are probably going to run a lot of their offense through Domantas Sabonis, and that's about as tough of a matchup for Sabonis as you can possibly have with Mobley and Allen there. So I think that that's one way that Cleveland kind of neutralize the Kings' best player.
I'm very sad I'm not on this with you guys, but I will sacrifice for the greater good. All right, Joe, you like Porzingis threes, 2.5 plus 140, or points, 18.5. Or I'm assuming you would like a same game parlay if things were to be there. What's your cap on Porzingis' scoring ability versus the Knicks?
I mean, basically, it's funny because Mitchell Robinson talked about defending Wemby, and he did a great job the other day. And it was funny because he was like, it's like defending Porzingis. But ironically enough, like Wemby, he kind of just missed a lot of like good looks. I thought he kind of had, and those are shots that Porzingis, he's got a much more tenured career, and he's been a great offensive player, and he's kind of taken advantage of those opportunities against the Knicks even this year and over the past couple of years. Over his last 4 games against the Knicks, he's made 5, 4, and 4 threes, including the opener this season. And he gets a lot of good looks. And I think in part it's because he's able to stretch Mitchell Robinson out onto the perimeter. And that's just a much tougher assignment for Robinson than, he's typically handled or tasked with handling. So I like Porzingis to do that. I think that it's one of those spots where he likes the challenge of kind of playing against the Knicks, because I feel like there is like a good amount of like bad blood, obviously, with the way, he was traded away from New York based on like some of the requests and stuff, but he always kind of shows up and performs well in New York. So I was saying you could take either the points or the threes because it has relatively the same hit rate. But I do lean the threes at the current number because the number's around like plus 150 as opposed to minus 110 on the points. So if the juice kind of comes down and you're starting to see like the 2.5 threes closer to like plus 110, I would probably just go to the points just because of the fact that you have a little bit more flexibility. But at plus 150, I think there's significantly more value on the threes instead of just the points.
If Porzingis scores over 19 points and hits more than hits 3 or more threes, what are the odds of the Knicks win this game?
Probably I don't know if it necessarily matters like too much, because obviously like it means that Porzingis has historically played pretty well against the Knicks. Plus like the number that we're looking at is what, like +8.5. I don't really like taking the Celtic. I wouldn't really want to add the Celtics money line into that. Number one, for my Knicks bias, but number two, I don't really like adding the -300 or so, right? Because I just think it's an added variable that isn't necessarily correlated with Porzingis's, like with the Celtics winning per se. Because it
What if
probably
you did an
means that
alternate
he's taking
spread?
away usage from somebody else. What?
What if you did an alt spread though? If you're saying that you don't like the 8.5, I'm just saying, look, if you think I'm having a hard time, even though I think the Knicks offense has gotten better, again, the RJ Barrett factor, like I have a hard time believing that if the Celtics are able to get 20 points out of Porzingis, that would mean that like Jaylen Brown has melted into the earth if this goes like under and the Knicks win this game. Like,
Yeah,
Jason Tatum's gonna do what Jason Tatum does. Like,
yeah,
we'll just pencil in Jason Tatum for 25.
Yeah, he just does what he does. I mean, I think that it's a tougher assignment for Brown just generally because RJ's been better defensively this year anyway. And I know like that's been a little, at least his offensive numbers have been a little bit, tenuous. Like I'm not super confident in that being consistent, but I think the defense is there, the effort's there. And then the Knicks have like a bunch of different guys to kind of throw on their point guard play, whether it's Quickly, Grimes, Brunson's obviously not the best defender. But you have Quickly and Grimes, you have Josh Hart. I kind of like what the Knicks can do to stifle some of the perimeter players like Drew, Derek White, and Jaylen Brown. But obviously, Tatum kind of eats whenever. So I think this is a Porzingis game for Boston.
Okay. Nothing for me tonight. Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Oh, just really briefly, I realized I forgot to touch on the Keegan Murray thing I mentioned at the beginning. The prop isn't out right now, and I'll be very curious to see. Played it last game and it hit, even though I was fading the Kings. I like his usage goes up a lot. He gets a lot more shots with Fox out. So if Fox is out, the 2 games so far, he's gotten 17 field goal attempts each game. Last game, he got up 10 threes. So I'm be looking at his points over if they hang like below 20 again. And I might even look towards an alt because if he gets some shooting luck from 3 on that, he really can put up a pretty big number. So keep an eye on that. I'll post something in the app if I like the number. But Keegan Murray is definitely a look, even though I'm not looking to play the Kings per se. That's also not the strongest spot in the Cavs lineup defensively. So I'm going to be looking to Keegan Murray tomorrow as well.
Okay. Those are your best bets for the Monday slate. Cavs money line, the Keegan Murray prop, and Kristaps Porzingis over on threes. 2.5 plus threes at, what was the number you got on that, on the juice?
Plus 150.
150. Very nice. As always, you can shop for those in the Action Network app. All right, let's talk about some futures. So you guys want to talk about DPOY. I think it's a fascinating market. As show sponsor, BetMGM, you do have a number of some interesting, I think, a little bit of stickiness, a little bit. Surprisingly to me, let's start at the top because I think that this is like an interesting one. There's some numbers I think are way off, and we'll get to why. But let's talk about the default here because I think it's good to talk about the guy that's at the absolute top of this list, which is bajillion time winner Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert is plus 600 right now to win this award. And I personally actually think that this is probably a little bit wrong. And the reason I think it's a little bit wrong, the number's off, and I think it's too short. I think that this is a very good number for November. And what I mean by that is, like everyone's just like, hey, look at the Wolves. Number 1 defense. Like I've been touting them because I'm like, number 1 defense with the number 1 strength of schedule defensively as well. Looks like they're going to win 50 plus games. All of this stuff is like, you can win, like multiple time winners tend to win this award. Brandon Anderson talked about that on our DPOY episode. Mm-hmm. Like all of these things kind of check the boxes. I think the problem is that when we get like under the hood a little bit of some of these, we start to see that Rudy might not be necessarily the dominant defensive force that he was with Utah, and that voters would probably eventually find enough of that to go in a different direction given how long the season is. Joe, let's start with you. What are your kind of thoughts on Rudy Gobert being the favorite right now for DPOY?
I mean, I think it makes sense like right now, right? Based on like what we've seen so far. The season's 10% over. And I think some of the underlying data on Minnesota, because like you have to have a top defense. Minnesota has the number one defense. I know some of these teams that and some of these players that we're going to talk about, I think that they have some like potential for regression in terms of their defense. But Minnesota, the one thing that I do like is their shot profile in terms of what they allow. They're number one in allowed effective field goal percentage, and they're fourth in expected allowed. So those numbers are actually not very far apart. And I like that because I think that what they're doing defensively, like schematically, should continue to work. Like the shots that they're allowing, they're also stopping them pretty well, and they're containing their opponents taking the shots that really they want them to take. Like they're not getting high percentage looks or anything like that. So I think that in that regard, it does make a lot of sense. I think that the problem with this spot is basically like still how many trade rumors are swirling around Minnesota, like about Karl Anthony Towns. And it's like, well, like number one, like why, like I'm still a little surprised like right now that there's that many like rumors or that there's like the rumor mill is kind of like that. But obviously like if there was a trade that sent Karl Anthony Towns out, I think that that could dramatically reshape the way that Minnesota plays basketball. And if that happens, there's going to always be like that type of learning period, or there's going to be some sort of curve. And I wonder how much that maybe impacts the defense overall. So I think that what you're also saying too is that Minnesota's defense has been excellent as a team. And there might be some things that as the season kind of goes along, you kind of notice that maybe there's some other players in Minnesota that are equally responsible for the defensive uptick.
I don't want to bet. So I think you can bet wings more than you used to be able to.
Yeah.
I don't want to bet for a wing on a team with another great defensive player.
Yeah.
Like I only want to bet a wing if it's like, how is this team any good defensively? Oh, like their wing defender is amazing and he just does everything. That's like the spot for it. So like, even though I think Jaden McDaniels has been arguably the best perimeter defender in the NBA thus far, I don't want to play it because there will always be, and it's kind of like the MVP thing, right? Where it's like, well, I can't vote for Curry. He's got KD. I can't vote for KD. He's got Curry. I can't do, I think it's kind of the same thing where it's like, look, yeah, Jaden McDaniels gets to play over aggressive on the perimeter because he's got Rudy Gobert backing him up, covering up for everything because nobody can get to the rim. And on the other side, it's, well, yeah, of course, Rudy's like dominant on the interior. He's got Jaden McDaniels hounding the offensive wing player and always funneling him to the right spot. So like, there's kind of like a defeat, I think a double split vote effect that can occur there, and that kind of negates both of them, where neither one of them gets the requisite credit. Jim, do you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think what I find so interesting about this award right now is it really, to me, it's like a very different approach if you are a portfolio bettor or I want one person to bet. Now, that's the case for a lot of these markets at all times, but I think this one in particular right now, I think you can almost, obviously it's early in the season, but I think you can really leverage a few of the longer shots who are going to be top five, but I don't think are going to be winners. But I really like picking up a few of them right now. And I actually do think that Gobert should be the favorite. I think that that's priced accurately. But I don't want to get him right now. I want to get the surrounding guys that I think are going to make up the rest of the top five right now and give myself that. You always talk about that. Like, what are you willing to pay in going from plus 600 down to plus maybe 250 by March or April? That's a long time, but it also, the number, it cuts in half, which is a big thing. But if you've kind of built your portfolio along the way to give you the pieces, then you can really go heavy on Gobert then when it's at plus 250. So I'm sure we'll talk through some of these guys, but my thought right now is I do think Gobert should be the favorite. But I think two things. I think we can build out the rest of the top five around him potentially at much longer numbers right now. And I think that B, he hasn't played 82 games, in 4 or 5 years at this point. At some point, he's going to roll an ankle. Wait till he's like a week or two into that, and his number has dropped maybe a little bit. And again, that's what we always talk about. These wait for those times. This is the buzziest time for Gobert. Like you said, their defense has been incredible to start the season, and he is starting to get that buzz again. So let's wait on this moment, and instead let's build up the rest of the portfolio so that if we need to, bite the bullet at the end of the season and be like, you know what? He didn't get hurt this season, and the number only went down. We didn't get a chance to jump. We got to do it. But you have such a good portfolio. You're like, all right, that's fine. We can leverage those pieces. So my approach as a portfolio bettor for this time of season, grab these longer numbers that I think are people that are potentially going to be around in the race, and then wait on Gobert until there's a better time.
Yeah, we'll talk about some of those options. I am curious why you think he is appropriately priced as the favorite.
Well, I think I do weigh the prior result a lot. We'll talk through some of these names. I'm with you. I don't know if it's Joe or Matt here in the doc that some of the next three names I think are very poorly priced. I think there's a few like Victor being in the top 3 or 4, whatever he is right now, I think is ridiculous. I don't think he is going to be there at the end of the season, in part because I think the team defensive rating is such a key part of this. It's proven time and time again. And because there are very few, let alone defensive player of the year. There's very few. I think there's 5 players all time who've even been named all rookie in their rookie, all defense in their rookie season. So that's to me is like the buzziest of buzz, and that number is way off to me. But Gobert, I think we'll talk through some of these names, but I don't think anyone right now has the quality of reputation, the previous results, and the team defense that I think is sustainable throughout the year. So I think he has the best of those 3 key factors to me.
Okay. One of the things we talked about when we did the How to Bet DPOY over the summer, we should kind of start with this, is, Brandon's got different fits, and you can go listen to that episode to find more guidelines on it. And I can remember most of it, but not all of it. The biggest thing is that last year I asked 7 voters. I said, hey, I'd like to get your thought process on DPOY. What's the first thing that you look at? And I was like, I'm not looking for names. I was like, I'm not looking just for a straw poll. I want to know about your process. Like, what is it that you look for? And 6 of them said, I look at team defensive rating first.
Yeah.
Do you have an elite defense? Right? Which, to be perfectly honest with you, is not great process. Like, I'm not flaming those people. I get it, because you're like, well, clearly, if you have a great, like, in order for be the best defensive player, your defense has to be great. I don't know that that's true. I actually think that like Drew Holiday was, to me, the best defender in the league when he was in New Orleans for about 4 years, and the Pelicans' defensive rating was shit. Which is surprising considering he played with top 75 player and noted best defensive player in the league by some people, Anthony Davis, but that's another conversation for another fucking day. Always push the vendetta, Joe. You got to always push the vendetta.
Always.
But regardless, that's like a starting point. And so if you're listening to this and you don't have the numbers handy, I'll just tell you, Minnesota is the best defense in the league. Boston is 2nd. Cleveland is 3rd. Orlando is 4th, which there's not a candidate for Orlando. Like, you can go through it. It's Jalen Suggs. Maybe.
It's Suggs. Yeah.
It's Suggs, which sucks.
And Suggs is not, and we can agree Suggs is not going to win. Can we agree on that?
We can agree on that.
Okay.
It's not happening.
Yeah, Suggs is not going to win. The Knicks are 5th, and we're going to talk about the New York Knicks here in a second. I think it's very interesting that the Miami Heat are 6th. No surprise. I'll be talking about that in a second. The Sixers are 7th. This is before Sunday night's games. The Nuggets are 8th. The Raptors are 9th. And the Memphis Grizzlies, despite being now 2-8, are 10th. Let's talk about the numbers that are way off. Okay. Over at BetMGM, Jaren Jackson is the 3rd favorite at plus 800. Now, I just told you that the Memphis Grizzlies, despite being 2-8, and despite the fact that they have to basically always be sprinting back because they can't make a shot, their offense is so horrifically terrible, they are still 10th in defense. By the way, just real quick here, so I'm on record about this. Defense is systemic. If they fire Taylor Jenkins for this start, it is absolutely reprehensible and the dumbest coach firing since Michael Malone. Go ask the Kings how that worked out. But
yeah,
I digress. I still think plus 800, like, I'm not saying, I want to get Jim's thoughts on this, because I'm not saying that Jaren can't win. He can. I'm saying, like, why would you buy it now when the Grizzlies look like, I don't think you're buying low on Jaren. This is basically saying, like, yeah, the Grizzlies might wind up missing the playoffs entirely and being below 500, but somehow Jaren's still going to win DPOY for the 2nd straight year. I don't know that I can get into that. Like, I don't disagree with Jaren having value as a player. I don't like him being the 3rd favorite here, even at 8-1, given how badly things have started for Memphis. There is like a surrounding, the Grizzlies had a bad season that I think would seep into those conversations, even if the defense was great. Maybe Ja fixes everything. I don't think this is a buy spot for Jaren Jackson. Jim, what do you think?
No, and I misspoke a little bit. So I said the next three players I thought were horribly mispriced. It's actually the tier right below that. So I think Mobley is decently priced as second favorite. I think Jaren Jackson, like, I'm kind of with you. I definitely wouldn't buy at this point, but I'm not like, I don't think this is horrendously mispriced. I don't think it should be 20-1 or something like that. It's the three guys after that. It's Victor, Anthony Davis, Brook Lopez, and even Giannis to agree that I don't think those should be the four names after that.
Right.
Partly because of team defense and partly because of health and partly because of a million factors there. I don't think those four names, but I'm fine with Jaren being third. I do think it's a little bit short for me to want to play it right now. But I think, we have seen about as bad of a start to the season from Memphis as imaginable. And even though Ja coming back isn't going to help the defense theoretically, I just think that's a team that they're weird. They need to just start fresh, right? And like I could see them being a top 5 defense the rest of the season. So I'm not going to totally write off Jaren. Him and Mobley, to be honest, are two of the names I really want to see how it plays out with Gobert over this next stretch. Like, that's the information collecting. I'm not looking to add them. Like, to me, those aren't long enough shots to leverage at this point. Let's get the information between those three favorites, and let's cut out some of that next tier to me, who I think are kind of flooding the market at prices I think are not at all accurate.
Yeah, Joe. So for me, this is the struggle, because I do tend to note this, that, we talk about buying low so much in betting conversations. If you're really buying low, it's not going to feel good. Like, you're not going to be like, oh man, love this bet right now. The Grizzlies are a tire fire rolling downhill. This is amazing. Super want this right now. I think there's a balance between buying low and recognizing, like, when that turn has happened, right? To see, like, okay, they're gonna pull out of this. They're on the upswing. They have the dead cat bounce, whatever. Like, they've hit rock bottom and are on the way back up. You have to be able to, I think, identify that first. And I don't know that a win over the Clippers, they are 2-2 with a terrible loss to Utah and some questionable officiating, but that's what happens to everybody. You should beat Utah at home. I'm sorry. I need more signs of life from Memphis. And then, like, if I see any sort of push, I'll be like, okay, I'll probably want Jaren, but I don't know if I'll want the price at that point. What do you think?
I mean, I think that if you want to buy Jaren, like, you kind of are banking on the Grizzlies improving, right? So, like, at the current number, Jaren's 8-1 to win DPOY. Like, they're plus 850 to win the division. Like, I think that, like, I'd rather back Memphis to, like, just perform better overall as a team, because then, like, it encompasses Ja coming back at some point, presumably. It encompasses them probably improving overall, like maybe getting a little bit of regression in terms of, like, what's going on the court. I think the number at 8-1 is just not one that I'm super interested in, especially because I think that most of us, like, here anyway, like, I have a preseason bet on Jaren at like plus 650. So it's like, I didn't even really get anything by the Grizzlies having this atrocious start. 10% of the season, is done. So I think it's really not worth opening a Jaren position at this point in time. But, like, if I didn't have a Grizzlies position and I was like, I think they could turn it around, I think that's maybe, like, the better way to play the Jaren DPOY, because I think that, like, you're right. They're 10th right now. Ja probably doesn't really help the defense. Maybe it does, just because of, like, what they can do in transition or something like that. And, like, the way the team kind of is going to go, because they're going to be playing a little bit more probably off of makes as opposed to in transition defensively. But I think that's kind of the way you have to look at it, and just hope that, if you want to open a Jaren position, I think you really just got to wait. And, I think it's okay to not have one right at this point in time.
I know that Jim's aching to get to the value on here, but I do want to go through some of the other numbers that I think are off here. Victor at plus 900 is laughable. Like,
crazy. Crazy.
Now,
that number is nuts.
The citation is going to be like, well, look at how good their defense is when he's on the floor. It's not going to. One, I don't think that there's any shot ever that they ever give it to a rookie. Two, like, again, I just told you, team defense is going to be, like, the deciding factor. Regardless of how good they are when he's on the floor, you do wind up getting impacted by the off minutes. And that's not fair, but it's accurate. Also, he's just not that good of a defender yet. Like, he's foul prone. He's going to get bodied. Like, all of these things are ridiculous. Like, this is a ridiculous number. The other one that's off to me is 11-1. I'm curious on Jim's thoughts. Look, notoriously, pretty critical of AD over here. He is the stocks leader. I'll say that. He leads the NBA in steals plus blocks. That's a really good metric for DPOY. Just rack up a lot of steals, rack up a lot of blocks. He's rebounding well. The problem for me is just simply the Lakers. The Lakers defense is not good. It is subpar. It is poor. It is bad. And as long as that is the case, you're never going to get me to bite on a DPOY bet, because you have to have, again, one of these top 5 defenses. At least top 7, I think, is probably where you got to get to. The Lakers are currently 20th in defensive rating. Yeah. Could they play better? Sure. But, it's like, well, when they get healthy, okay. All right. They got Rui Hachimura back the other night. Good win over the Suns. Vando is not going to turn them into a top 5 defense.
No.
There's still enough minutes with D'Angelo Russell and Austin Reeves getting absolutely barbecued. Cam Reddish helps. He defended pretty well the other night. I don't know if that's sustainable. But until if the Lakers get to within 12, if it's like, oh man, they jumped from 17 to 12, okay, we can start talking about it. But Jim, I don't think AD's got a shot as long as, 1, we're always going to have the injury issues. 2, the Lakers' entire season narrative is that they're underperforming, and 3, the defense has been bad.
Yeah, we've got a lot of names to get to. Honestly, I'm just going to say you hit every point I was going to hit. It was going to be you're paying too short of a price for the injury history plus the team defense. So let's skip him. I'm with you 100%.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and unleash you, Jim. Go ahead and get me the names.
Jim's been dying.
The long shot that you think the value.
Okay. All right, there's a trio. There's 3 names. I'm skipping ahead. We can circle back because there is a little middle tier as well that I think is interesting. But the 3 names, if we're going to jump ahead to a couple of value plays, I think they could really get leveraged well at the end of the season. There's 3 guys at 50 to 1 at BetMGM. You can get even a little bit longer numbers if you shop around. But the 3 that are jumping to me: Mitchell Robinson, Jaden McDaniels, Kristaps Porzingis. So Mitchell Robinson, I know, is the one that's probably going to get the feistiest here. So let's lead with Mitchell. I actually want to hit. Joe had some really good numbers down in the doc. So I'll kick it to you, Joe, because I know you had some good stuff in there.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously love Mitchell Robinson, like my Knicks fan in me, right? But my concern with the Knicks and the number, I think the number is great. 50 to 1, 60 to 1 is great. I love that, right? I think the problem with New York's defense, overall as a team, is that, and they've been kind of getting lucky, in previous years. What was it? 2 years ago, they had a great defense, and it was one of those, you looked at the numbers and it made absolutely no sense. And it was they were allowing the highest frequency of 3-pointers in the league, and then teams were shooting literally bottom 5% on those threes. Part of it, I think, has to do with the Tibbs mentality, the hustle, the closing out, but it's something that I think is very, very tenuous. And right now, they're 14th best in effective field goal percentage allowed, but 23rd expected. So to me, that signifies that there should be some defensive regression there. And then even a little bit would take New York out of a top 5 to 7 range, probably into 10 to 12, right? And then I think that changes the profile for this. Mitch, though, great. He's tied for 4th in defensive win shares at 0.6. So I think the number for Mitch is long. Do I think he could win? I think it's unlikely. Given the fact that I think he's a great defender. I think that he's gotten better as he's gotten less foul prone. But my concern with Mitch, it's it kind of goes back to the Porzingis cap, right? Those are types of players that he struggles to defend. He has a clear weakness in terms of what his defensive abilities are. A lot of these guys do, but Mitch's is he really struggles with that stretch 5. And that's something that in today's NBA, I think is so important to be able to cover that it makes it hard for me to bet on Mitch in the spot.
So I did a poor job. Sorry.
I'm going to give my full take on this, which is going to just drive me absolutely insane. I want to ask this question up front, Jim. Are you going to get off this call and are you going to bet on Mitchell Robinson?
Okay, so here I did do a poor job. So those are 3 names that I will bet, but it's going to be a very small amount because I don't see any of the 3 winning. To me, this is the Brook Lopez bet from last year. I did not see Brook Lopez winning, but it was such a valuable chip. And if one of those chips plays out, I think 1 or 2, or probably not all 3, 1 or 2 of those guys could well be in the race at the end of the season. I do not see any of the 3 winning. I do want to be clear with that, but I think that doesn't mean it's not a useful bet still.
No, I totally agree because like what you're saying here, to kind of put this in perspective for newer bettors if you're listening, if you hit Brook early last year, and I'll be perfectly honest with you, I never bet Brook. I bet everybody else in case somebody else snuck up, but like I never bet Brook because I never thought he was going to win, which meant that the entire last 2 months of the season, while that number kept dropping, I had to sweat and be like, no one I've talked to thinks it's Brook. No voter I've talked to thinks it's Brook. Every indication is that it's not going to be Brook. And the books were like, oh, gotta shorten this. Brook Lopez has got to be a favorite now. Versus like Jim, who like puts big position when Brook is a long shot and gets to hammer then Jaren at the end of the year at a shorter number because he's playing against basically a two-man race with him and Brook. So the key here is like, if it turns into Mitchell Robinson versus Jaren Jackson, and you already got Mitchell Robinson at 50-1, you can add to that, or you could just go back the other way and bet the hell out of whoever winds up in a two-man race of it, because we will see it wind up being either a two-man or a three-man race. And so that's how you build that portfolio. I put this in the doc as like the make-believe hour on Mitchell Robinson.
Like if you can't sell a Knicks fan,
and I look, I gotta be honest with you. So I looked at two numbers for this, most in particular, because EPM, defensive EPM's not out yet. It's gonna be out this week over at Dunks and Threes. Here are the leaders for steals, blocks, and rebounds per game. These are dumb stats. I want to be very clear on that. These stats should not impact like who's the best defender in the NBA. And this is just like historically how the voters have voted, because to be quite honest with you, this award is beyond the scope of what voters can do. And I say that as somebody that's very defensive of the voter block. Like, I think a lot of the voters take like a lot of time and are considerate and careful, and they weigh a lot of good factors. And I think most of the time they get it right. And then sometimes Kendrick Perkins says something and they vote for Joel Embiid. But in general, they do a very good job of like leveraging all this information. But defense is impossible. The metrics are never going to give you a clear enough view. The smartest analytics people that I know are still like, we have very little usable information on defense in terms of a clear picture. You can correlate from a lot of different places, which is what I try and do. You have to do the film work. And like a beat writer covering the Rockets doesn't have time to sit down and watch 2,000 Jaren Jackson defensive possessions. You just don't have time, right? No. MVP, you can actually sit down and you just go through. I'm going to go through every single point they generated. And you can do that. Like, to be honest with you, I'm a sicko, so I do that. Defense is way worse because there's so many possessions where they're not even involved. They're just like on the court, right? It's impossible. So anyway, steals, blocks, rebounds. Anthony Davis is number 1. Rudy Gobert is number 2. Okay, so this we're checking out right here with the big names. Ayton's number 3. Good for him. Jokic is 4th. That's hilarious. Sabonis is 5th. That's also hilarious. Embiid is 6th. That kind of tracks. 7th is Mitchell Robinson. And now if you look at all of these players, and then you look at on-court defensive rating, it's Rudy Gobert, and then it's going to be Mitchell Robinson. And so, like, this correlates pretty well. This also strengthens Rudy Gobert's case for being the favorite, as Jim mentioned. I think you're right. It's a wrong number at 50-1. Like, he's going to rebound like a madman. He's going to generate enough blocks, and if the Knicks defense is good enough. What's interesting is the Knicks defense is only 2 points better with him on the court than off. But that's a number that I will look at, and most voters won't. RJ Barrett has the second best defensive rating in the NBA, behind, by the way, Anthony Edwards, Rudy Gobert's teammate. Yeah. I'm sorry, third. It's Tatum, Anthony Edwards. This is minimum 30 minutes. It's Edwards, Tatum, and then RJ Barrett, then Rudy Gobert. Mitchell's not necessarily on that list, but I agree, Joe. Like, there's probably value here just based off of 50-1.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that, you know, if you want to build a portfolio, because I think that most of us, like, especially if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, we're telling you, like, this is how I'm constructing my portfolio. I think that he's probably a position that you want, especially because if you remember, even like last year when we were talking about most improved, and like, it was like Brunson was a candidate, right? But it's always like, and then quickly, even for 6th man of the year, right? It's like you have these guys, and when they're from New York, you get a New York bump. And like, it's something that I think you need to account for in these awards that are not just like statistically based, especially defensive player of the year, where it's much harder, like you mentioned, to find like a specific stat or anything direct. And it's like New York's playing a lot of games. Like they're playing, well, everybody plays the same amount of games, but they're playing a lot of games on national TV. They've got a lot of eyes on them. It's the Knicks. And then it's like, that's always something that you should consider just based on these narrative awards, because, you know, maybe you're going to see like less games of the Minnesota Timberwolves, even as good as they are. You're just not going to see as many.
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
Hey, Matt. My part of my goal was to bring up these three names and then us talk it out. And if we want to log one, I think logging one of these three is the best. So can we touch on the other two briefly?
Yeah.
My thought is actually, so I think of the three, I think Jaden McDaniels is both the most likely to be in the top 5 at the end of the season and the least likely to win. But I kind of like that as of the three at 50-1. I think I like it potentially most as the best chip, but I want to hear what both of you guys think as well.
I think it's hard to take it from Rudy, to be honest with you, like, because voters are going to go like, is this a McDaniels thing? Like, as good as he is, or like, even think about it. Like, it reminds me of Boston a couple of years ago, right? When Mark Smart won, if Robert Williams didn't get hurt, Robert Williams is going to win that award. And I think it's like similar. Like, I think they generally like are going to want to go to the big, just based on the way that the stats are. And Rudy obviously has the pedigree. It's like a safe vote. Whereas like Jaden McDaniels, I think you're right. Like, he's probably least likely to win, but I think he has direct competition from his own team, which makes it harder. What
if Rudy misses like 17, 18 games though, and suddenly he's at like 60 games played, they have the top defense, he can't get voted it, and it's like, well, let's vote Jaden to reward that defense.
If Rudy
I don't
gets
think
hurt,
the market, I think the defense can hold, but I don't think that the market moves enough to force us to bet it now.
Yeah,
like I think if Rudy, go ahead.
I would say, if Rudy gets hurt, you could just bet it then. Like, Jaden's not going to move from 50-1.
Gotcha.
He's just not going to move. Like, he's not. He doesn't.
Like,
I don't think he's
correlated
there.
market will not shift. Like, if Rudy gets hurt, win totals, playoff odds, etc. Like, the direct team markets will move, but there won't be a direct. I don't. Even if there is like a slight move on if anything with Jaden, it's probably going to be he moves longer, because they're going to be like, the Wolves defense won't be as good.
Like,
right?
people, and like I would say, like, the voters, like, they have to know Jaden McDaniels is dynamite. They have to know. And when his extension got announced, people were like, what? Like, what is that? Like, you know what I mean? But it's like, we're like, it's because he's awesome. Like, he's great, you know? So, but like, people, it matters. Like, they have to know.
The other thing I would mention here, and this is coming from someone that bet Alex Caruso in preseason, so I understand that I'm an idiot. Last year, total points amongst the DPOY voting for non-bigs, I'm counting Giannis as a big here, is 19 points total between 4 players. OG got 8 points. Drew Holiday got 8 points. Alex Caruso got 2 points. Jimmy Butler got 1. Jaren Jackson Jr., by comparison, got 391. Brook Lopez got 309. Evan Mobley already got 101. And Draymond got 34, just in a down year for the Warriors. So, you know, I kind of agree with you in terms of, like, he's got so much momentum behind him. But, like, to me, OG Anunoby was so good last year, and I'm not an OG guy.
Yeah.
And he barely scratched it. So I think we can wait and maybe bet it if Rudy gets hurt, see how the narrative develops. I also think the splitting it is tough there. Who's the third main name, Jim? Because we talked about Mitchell, Jaden. Who's the third?
Kristaps, who honestly I put at when he was at 151. I like that number. At 51, I think it has moved a little bit too much already, because I don't think he's going to win, and I'm not sure if he's going to get the credit for the Celtics defense. To me, it was just another number that did not look to be totally right as a defense that's going to be in the top 2 or 3 at the end of the season. He's the big man for it, but he doesn't have the pedigree. He has lots of health questions, so it's probably my least favorite of the 3, but I think it's kind of a fun one as the big man on a top defense at 50-1.
It sucks that Jason Tatum's never going to win. He's got an encore right now of 98.
Yeah.
Tatum's an incredible defender. Good. He's got like I said, he's top 3 in DPOY. He's so good, and he never gets credit for it. I think of the 3, I think Mitchell Robinson's the one that we should play. That's the one I think we should play for the long shot.
I agree.
Let's put that on the
I agree.
I'm going to play that one. A few more I want to talk about. If you want to play something shorter, I will say that the more I've looked at it, Evan Mobley at plus 750 is probably the one of the top that I like the best. Cavs are going to be a top 5 defense. They are undeniably going to be better. Mobley's better this year. He is even better defensively. Cavs are kind of shaking off that early season part where they were without Allen and Garland and it looked like a mess, but the defense is still so good. Mobley's individual metrics check out. His numbers are gonna track. He's gonna be, I think, within those kind of ranges. I'm not necessarily saying I'm going to bet him now, but I do think that he probably has value here at plus 750, Joe.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that plus 750 is close. I might consider adding at least like a partial position on Mobley right now, just because I think that the Cavs, kind of going back even to our best bets, right? Like we like the Cavs in part because they're whole. And as long as Allen is healthy, I think that really, really helps the defense. It helps Mobley a lot. It's going to help their statistics. It's going to help their record. And I think that it's only going to improve, moving forward. Obviously, you don't want to bank on injuries or, count them out. But the fact that Cleveland kind of held through it already and Mobley was there, I think that, and his usage is still good. I think that he's going to have plenty of opportunity to kind of improve over the rest of the season. So plus 750 is not bad.
Thoughts on Mobley, Jim?
Yeah, ironically, I think my position on Mobley is kind of your guys' position on McDaniels. I don't see a world in which Mobley is a runaway favorite in this. So he is very much in the tier of I want to get more information for Jaren Jackson Jr., Mobley, and Gobert. The only other name that I want to make sure we touch on briefly, and to me, this is the player that if you are I'm going to bet this once and sit on it all year, and I'm betting it today listening to Buckets on November 13th, I think the best play is Joel Embiid at 20-1. That defense is going to be the defense is going to be up there. He looks outstanding. He looks the best he has looked. He looks better than last year when he won his MVP. He's not going to get another MVP. So maybe the move goes to, okay, we cannot give him another MVP, which I am on record. You cannot give him another MVP, but that defense is playing outstanding. He is playing outstanding basketball. You've said it, Matt. And at 20-1, if you want one play today, I think that is the one play to make. But I can tell the room does not agree.
Just no way.
Jim caped for Embiid and then had the playoffs happen and didn't learn his lesson. Because I'm not saying MVP. Just okay. So Joel is playing awesome. He's been amazing. Okay, rebounding has been a real focus. They're playing really great. Another great win over the Pacers tonight. Like I think this team has a real verve. By the way, thoughts with Kelly Oubre. After getting hit by a car, that sucks. That's awful.
Terrible.
That's a pretty significant blow for them. That's actually going to hurt them, I think, more than folks realize. I think one of the problems here, Jim, is that one, I think he's going to have a hard time. He's not going to have the kind of like random blocks that Rudy gets, just because Rudy is so much more active, right? And so teams just won't challenge him, and that's wise because like he's a really good rim protector. He's gotten better at perimeter oriented stuff, but he's not going to necessarily shine. I don't know how many games we're going to look at and go, man, Embiid just dominated on defense. He's just going to be really good every single night. Defense is it can either be positional or it could be playmaking. And I think Embiid's positionality defense is superb. I think his playmaking defense is a little short.
I will say right now, he's averaging more blocks per game than Rudy Gobert.
Maybe not after tonight. Yeah. Gobert's got like 5 in the first half.
That's fair. It's very early in the season, but he's averaging. I think is it a career high? It's the highest since his rookie season for blocks per game, 2.3. Again, it's early. That could change, but he does look. Again, I am truly with Embiid. I do keep falling for it over and over and over again. But I do think it looks the best he has looked in a long time. But my whole push for Embiid. My push for Embiid MVP last season was a fully separate thing of a weird historical, not wanting to give Jokic before he wins the title, which, has aged very poorly, but I maintain what I said last year. So I don't think that Embiid should be punished for my terrible takes from last year.
My restraint not cutting off your mic there. So I'll say this, like, I have a hard time. If you want to say like the Mobley runaway, my counter argument to that would be he got 100 points last year. Like I actually thought that Mobley wasn't great last year, and he still got so much credit. That's a big part of my cap on Mobley is that I look at last year's performance. Voters want to give Mobley this award. They think that he is incredible. And I think this year he's actually been really great. He's lived up to the reputation.
Yeah.
So that to me is kind of part of that equation. You mentioned, the football, like Lucy with the football. Embiid is Lucy with the football with you.
Mm-hmm.
Even though, like, if you bet Embiid, it cashed, The one for me is Bam Adebayo. Bam Adebayo is averaging a career high in rebounds and blocks. He's averaging career high in steals plus blocks. So stocks, the Heat are 6th in defense. He's the best defender in the NBA. I'll keep shouting it from the rooftops until someone listens to me. He's the best defender in the NBA. He's 16-1. I'm going to bet it again. I'm going to lose money on it again. I'm just going to keep doing this, Joe. I will just keep betting Bam Adebayo and losing money because no one realizes that the only reason this Heat defense is any goddamn good is Bam Adebayo.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I think it's fair to want to bet on Bam, but it's just Miami might not be that good either. So I know they're kind of they're floating around, they're hanging in there, but this Tyler Hero injury I think is a really big deal, and especially if Bam's actually seeing his highest offensive usage rate of his career. He's up 4%. He's up to 28%. So I think it's the offensive load that he's having to carry this season, especially now, unless Jaime Jaquez Jr. is the second coming of Tyler Hero. But I think it's just a big ask for him to perform that well on both ends of the floor and not see any type of hit defensively. So I struggle to see it, and I just struggle to see Miami kind of sticking around. And I think that they might kind of be in that scenario where it's they're not that good. And then people kind of look at it and they're like, well, are we sure we want to give it to Bam when there's these other guys that are, the teams are better or whatever the circumstance is?
Yeah, that's a good point. If the Wolves finish with 50 plus wins and the Heat get to 43.
Yeah.
Right. Gobert or Jaden McDaniels is going to win that award.
Yeah. If I was going to pick a player from a team that's kind of in that range, right, where it's maybe they're in the play-in or they're a 6 seed or something like that, I'm looking at the Brooklyn Nets and I'm looking at Nick Claxton at 50-1. Claxton's awesome. He got a couple votes last year for the all defensive team. I think he's one of those players that's super impactful. The name is there. He gets a lot of blocks, and he's somebody that is recognizable. He plays in Brooklyn, and this team, I think the defense is actually going to be pretty legit. Claxton historically throughout his career has been a positive on the defensive side of the floor. He's automatic on betting over 1.5, 2.5 blocks. And I think that Brooklyn, they kind of struggle offensively, but that same personnel that struggles offensively is elite defensively. If Simmons is healthy, Claxton's healthy, that is so much length, so much switchability between those two, and then Bridges, that this team, I think when healthy, could have very easily a top 8 defense, and Claxton could really be at the front of it. He had a plus 2.7 defensive EPM last year, 97th percentile. So he's legit. He has the pedigree, and he plays the right position, I think, to kind of win this award.
I love that Joe is such an NBA sicko that he just, in listing pros for Nick Claxton, said the name is there. You have to be so deep in the NBA to think that the name value of Nick Claxton is a pro. But I love it, Joe. That's a sicko comment.
That's right, though. I bet the Wizards Nets over yesterday, and then got the notification before the game that Nick Claxton was playing, and I was like, oh fuck. And what do you know? 85.5 defensive rating when on court for Nick Claxton in his first game back. The one I will mention is Scotty Barnes. We talked about him for most improved player. Look, the steals and blocks are there. The Raptors are a top 10 defense. This guy's a beast, man. He pops every time that you watch him. He's an elite defender that can guard 1 through 5, right? And the Raptors have a bunch of those dudes. And that's part of why they're good defensively, is they have a bunch of those dudes. But Barnes really stands out to me. And it wouldn't necessarily shock me, if the Raptors were to really surge and stay competitive. Now, part of this is every time that they run up against, a serious team, they are screwed. They are absolutely screwed every time they run up against a serious team. But, the defense holds. Their big problem is, they struggle when they run up against good defenses that can just, hold down their offense into the 40s. But they ran it up on the Mavericks' terrible defense because they just got stops and ran and got stops and ran and got stops and ran. That'll give them enough team success. I actually think Scotty Barnes has a little bit of value here at 25-1. I think I might bet that. Do we have any other long shots on the board for this award?
No, I think we covered
them all.
Yeah,
all right,
we got them all.
Okay, so we're gonna put in Mitchell Robinson in the app on the Buckets podcast. We're gonna put that one in. What have I done with my life? By the way, RJ Barrett has the best defensive rating of anybody on the Knicks. That's like the guy that's like standing out, and he has the highest differential between on and off court.
He's
Knicks are winning the title. Knicks are winning the title. Knicks versus Wolves.
Well, I unfortunately I'll say. Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because there's a lot of talk that that could be a way more interesting matchup than it appears right now. But that's a story for another time. Thank you for joining us. Make sure to check out all the great stuff on youtube.com/The Action Network. Download the Action Network app. My thanks to David Payne, our producer, and our video team, including Hutton Jackson, getting this up on YouTube. We'll see you guys again tomorrow for Tuesday Best Bets. My thanks to the Jays for joining me. We'll see you guys again next time. Until then, let's get buckets.